Hare Krishna, and good morning from ISKCON Hong Kong. I'm Sravaniya Dasi, and today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, text number 38. Thank you for joining us. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pucharani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasachadista. Let's begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanang Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. Today's topic is saving human civilization. Now, in this chapter, having saved the cow and the bull from being attacked, Mahārāja Parīkṣit is ready to punish Kali, the personality of irreligion. Those who are listening for the first time, here are some previous verses to provide context. It's from text 29. When the personality of Kali understood that the king was willing to kill him, he at once abandoned the dress of a king and, under pressure of fear, completely surrendered unto him, bowing his head. Yes. Mahārāja Parīkṣit, who was qualified to accept surrender and worthy of being sung in history, did not kill the poor, surrendered, and fallen Kali, but smiled compassionately, for he was kind to the poor. King thus said, "We have inherited the fame of Arjuna. Therefore, since you have surrendered yourself with folded hands, you need not fear for your life. But you cannot remain in my kingdom, for you are the friend of irreligion. If the personality of Kali, irreligion, is allowed to act as a man-god or an executive head, certainly irreligious principles like greed, falsehood, robbery, incivility, treachery, misfortune, cheating, quarrel, and vanity will abound. Therefore, O friend of irreligion, you do not deserve to remain in a place where experts perform sacrifices according to truth and religious principles for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead." Sri Suta Goswami said, the personality of Kali, being thus ordered by Mahārāja Parīkṣit, began to tremble in fear. Seeing the king before him like Yamaraj, ready to kill him, Kali spoke to the king as follows. "O your majesty, although I may live anywhere and everywhere under your order, I shall but see you with bow and arrows wherever I look. Therefore, O chief amongst the protectors of religion, please fix some place for me where I can live permanently under the protection of your government." Okay, that's the prelude up to today's verse and purport. Text 38. Sutta uvacha avyatitastada tasmai sthanani kalaye dadau dyutang panang striya suna yatra dharmas chaturvidah. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Suta Goswami said, Mahārāja Parīkṣit, thus being petitioned by the personality of Kali, gave him permission to reside in places where gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter were performed. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The basic principles of irreligiosity, such as pride, prostitution, intoxication, and falsehood, counteract the four principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. The personality of Kali was given permission to live in four places, particularly mentioned by the king: namely the place of gambling, the place of prostitution, the place of drinking, and the place of animal slaughter. Srila Jiva Goswami directs that drinking against the principles of scriptures, such as the Sotramani Yagya, association with women outside marriage, and killing animals against the injunctions of scriptures are irreligious. In the Vedas, two different types of injunctions are there. For the pravritas, or those who are engaged in material enjoyment, and for the nivritas, or those who are liberated from material bondage. The Vedic injunction for the pravritas is to gradually regulate their activities toward the path of liberation. Therefore, for those who are in the lowest stage of ignorance and who indulge in wine, women, and flesh, drinking by performing the Sotramani Yagya, association of women by marriage, and flesh eating by sacrifices are sometimes recommended. Such recommendations in the Vedic literature are meant for a particular class of men, not for all. But because they are injunctions of the Vedas for particular types of persons, such activities by the pravritas are not considered adharma. One man's food may be poison for others. Similarly, what is recommended for those in the mode of ignorance may be poison for those in the mode of goodness. Srila Jiva Goswami, therefore, affirms that recommendations in the scriptures for a certain class of men are never to be considered adharma or irreligious. But such activities are factually adharma, and they are never to be encouraged. The recommendations in the scriptures are not meant for the encouragement of such adharma, but for regulating the necessary adharma gradually toward the path of dharma, little by little. Following in the footsteps of Mahārāja Parīkṣit, it is the duty of all executive heads of states to see that the principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, are established in the state, and that the principles of irreligion, namely pride, illicit female association or prostitution, intoxication, and falsity, are checked by all means. And to make the best use of a bad bargain, the personality of Kali may be transferred to places of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and slaughterhouses, if there are any places like that. Those who are addicted to these irreligious habits may be regulated by the injunctions of the scripture. In no circumstances should they be encouraged by any state. In other words, the state should categorically stop all sorts of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and falsity. The state which wants to eradicate corruption by majority may introduce the principles of religion in the following manner. Now, Srila Prabhupada gives a list of procedures, and this sounds like life in the ashram. When you live in the bhakti ashram, this is what life is like. Okay. Number 1, 2 compulsory fasting days in a month, if not more. This is austerity. Even from the economic point of view, such 2 fasting days in a month in the state will save tons of food. And the system will also act very favorably on the general health of the citizens. Number 2, there must be compulsory marriage of young boys and girls attaining 24 years of age and 16 years of age, respectively. There's no harm in coeducation in the schools and colleges, provided the boys and girls are duly married. And in case there is any intimate connection between a male and female student, they should be married properly without illicit relation. The Divorce Act is encouraging prostitution, and this should be abolished. Number 3, the citizens of the state must give in charity up to 50% of their income for the purpose of creating a spiritual atmosphere in the state or in human society, both individually and collectively. They should preach the principles of Bhagavatam by karma yoga, or doing everything for the satisfaction of the Lord, by regularly hearing of the Srimad Bhagavatam from authorized persons or realized souls, by chanting of the glories of the Lord congregationally at home or at places of worship, by rendering all kinds of service to the Bhagavatas engaged in preaching Srimad Bhagavatam, and residing in a place where the atmosphere is saturated with God consciousness. If the state is regulated by the above process, naturally there will be God consciousness everywhere. Gambling of all description, even speculative business enterprise, is considered to be degrading. And when gambling is encouraged in the state, there is a complete disappearance of truthfulness, allowing young boys and girls to remain unmarried more than the above-mentioned ages, and licensing animal slaughterhouses of all description should be at once prohibited. The flesh eaters may be allowed to take flesh as mentioned in the scriptures, and not otherwise. Intoxication of all description, even smoking cigarettes, chewing tobacco, or the drinking of tea, must be prohibited. That's the purport. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so some of my thoughts and some of my research. Srila Prabhupada, the transcendental alchemist, is diagnosing the cancer that is destroying human civilization all over the world, and he's prescribing the cure. In the purport, he writes, in other words, the state should categorically stop all sorts of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and falsity. So, in a lecture that Srila Prabhupada gave in 1966, he recounted this. So, when I was 70 years old, I decided, now I must do and execute the order of my Guru Maharaj. And this movement was started in 1965 from New York. And I was not very much hopeful, because it is a very difficult task, just opposite the European and Western culture. When I first came, I had no money. So I got a free passage through some Indian steam navigation company. So I came by ship. And so when I was on the ship at Boston Port, Commonwealth Port, I was thinking that I've come here and I do not know what is the purpose, because how the people will accept this movement. They are differently educated. And as soon as I will say, so my dear sir, you have to give up meat eating and illicit sex and no intoxication and gambling, they will say, please go home. There was laughter, because that was the experience of one of my godbrothers. He went to London and he had the opportunity to talk with one big man, Marquis of Zetland. Marquis of Zetland was formerly governor of Bengal. At that time I was a student. He was Scotsman. I was a student of the Scottish Churches College. So he came to see our college, and he was standing in front of me in the second year class. So he was very nice, good gentleman. So he proposed to my godbrother, can you make me a Brahmin? So my godbrother proposed, yes, we can make anyone Brahmin, provided you follow this principle. No illicit sex, no intoxication, no meat eating, no gambling. Lord Zetland immediately replied, impossible. So I was thinking that I will propose something which is impossible. Anyway, let me try. So that Prabhupada remembering the whole idea of teaching Krishna consciousness in the Western world. Well, as we know, Krishna can do anything, and he does it through his pure devotee. Srila Prabhupada could turn hippies into Brahmins when they followed his instructions properly. And many of those instructions are in today's purport. The hippie generation was raised in an atmosphere of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Romantic films depicting intimate behavior between men and women fomented eroticism in the youth. Timothy Leary was a Harvard psychology professor. He later became a psychedelic drug advocate, and he popularized the counterculture phrase, turn on, tune in, drop out, through his advocacy and experiments with LSD. Even high school teachers posited that one can become more creative and enlightened by taking recreational hallucinogens. Popular songs pushed doing drugs as fun, and one's own classmates could easily provide them. However, the fact is that this kind of tamaguna mode of ignorance behavior makes one more dependent and unable to think enough to defer with what is being imposed on the masses. Those in higher positions found this to be a very lucrative business. And now with the internet and alternative media, the fact that we were being purposely misled by demagogues is emerging. H.L. Mencken, defined as a demagogue, not a demigod, demagogue, right? As one who preaches doctrines he knows to be untrue to men he knows to be idiots. That's a demagogue. Mencken was a famous American journalist and a critic known for his sharp wit and cynical views on politics, democracy, and human nature. He claimed that the average person rarely thinks throughout the entirety of their life, preferring the comfort of cliches and emotional deception over the painful process of genuine reasoning. His famous quotes include this one: "The most dangerous man to any government is the man who is able to think things out for himself, without regard to the prevailing superstitions and taboos. Almost inevitably, he comes to the conclusion that the government he lives under is dishonest, insane, and intolerable." Okay. In the mode of goodness, one's intelligence is active, but the mode of ignorance switches it off. Now, the demagogues promote a culture of ignorance, and by so doing are able to keep others passively under their control. Regarding prohibiting intoxication, Srila Prabhupada writes, this is in Canto 1, Chapter 11, Text 18 and 19, Purport, "The government opens wine shops, but this does not mean that the government encourages the drinking of wine. The idea is that there is a class of men who will drink at any cost. And it has been experienced that prohibition in great cities encouraged illicit smuggling of wine." That's Srila Prabhupada's purport. According to my research on this subject, which I have mentioned in a previous class, the 18th Amendment, which established prohibition, is the only U.S. constitutional amendment ever to be repealed. When Prohibition took effect in the United States in January 1920, many thousands of formerly legal saloons across America, which were catering only to men, closed down. The result of Prohibition was a major and permanent shift in American social life. People wanting to drink had to buy liquor from illegal sellers, who are known as bootleggers. Another option was to enter private unlicensed bar rooms, which were called speakeasies. No longer segregated from drinking together, men and women reveled in speakeasies and house parties. Organized criminals quickly seized on the opportunity to exploit the new lucrative criminal racket of speakeasies and clubs, and they welcomed the women in as patrons. Organized crime in America exploded because of bootlegging. Al Capone, leader of the Chicago outfit, made an estimated $60 million a year. Now, if we adjust that for inflation, That would have been $972 million a year today. He was supplying illegal beer and hard liquor to thousands of speakeasies he controlled in the late 20s. The competition for patrons in speakeasies also created a demand for live entertainment. And the prevalence of jazz bands, liquor-infused partying grew during the Roaring Twenties, when the term dating, which means young singles meeting without parental supervision, was first introduced. So that didn't happen before the 20s in America. In the United States, the nationwide ban on alcoholic beverages was repealed by the passage of the 21st Amendment to the Constitution in 1933. In America, drinking remains a nationwide addiction. Businessmen and workers take to intoxication to forget their troubles. But drinking does not only not solve their problems, it even creates more problems due to the fact that it shuts off the intelligence. One may therefore engage in activities which he would never consider in a sober state of mind. Intelligence rationalizes. If I do this, this will happen. Is this right? Is it beneficial? But intoxication switches off that function, and thus one is dragged down into the whirlpool of material energy by uncontrolled senses. Self-realization begins when the self is controlling the mind and the senses. Therefore, intoxication of any sort must be prohibited. But this is a personal choice by the individual. It cannot be imposed upon the mass of people at the present time, as is evident from the case of Prohibition and its inevitable repeal. Regarding gambling, a lot of people online are asking the question, is investing in the stock market the same as gambling? Well, AI gives a reply. Okay, here's the reply from, I guess, Gemini, right? No, the stock exchange is not the same as gambling. While both involve putting money at risk with a certain future return, they have completely different underlying structures, mathematical odds, and economic purposes. Buying a stock means you buy a tiny piece of a real business. Buying a lottery ticket or a casino chip is just placing a bet on an artificial game. The stock market helps companies grow by raising capital for the economy and historically grows upward over long periods. Gambling creates no new economic value and simply moves existing money around. Okay, thank you, Gemini. However, in an Investopedia article, we find this. Quote, this is the headline. Is Warren Buffett right that the stock market is like a casino? What investors need to know. This is from January 2025 by Daniel Liberto. Warren Buffett has increasingly argued in recent years that it's not just the ubiquitous sports betting apps that have made your phone a pocket casino. In his 2024 annual letter to shareholders, the legendary investor warned that today's stock market increasingly resembles gambling, with Wall Street profiting with everyday investors chase quick returns through trading apps. Trading app on your phone, right? Research shows modern stock trading shares concerning similarities with gambling addiction, with up to 90% of online day traders losing money and some seeking help from gambling treatment clinics. Well, here's a new one. Gambling treatment clinics. Buffett claims that mobile trading apps have created a casino in your pocket phenomenon that Wall Street profits through trading fees. Wall Street charges trading fees. While speculative trading can mirror gambling, traditional buy and hold investing in quality companies still offers a proven path to a long-term wealth creation, as demonstrated by Buffett's success. Okay. So some might consider a casino in your pocket to be progress. Well, progress could either go up or down. And that looks like the half of the truth that got left out. Okay, now let's look at drinking tea. Today's purport ends with this assertion: intoxication of all description, even smoking cigarettes, chewing tobacco, or the drinking of tea must be prohibited. These seemingly minor unwanted habits turn up in the most unexpected places. Here's an excerpt from Srila Prabhupada Lila Amrita, Volume 1, Chapter 2. And here's a note. Srila Prabhupada was previously known as Abhay Charande. Okay, so when they say Abhay, it means Prabhupada. Here's an excerpt from the book. In 1920, Abhay completed his 4th year of college and took the BA exam. Afterwards, with the ordeal of final examinations behind him, he took a short vacation. To fulfill a long-cherished desire, he traveled alone a day's journey by train to Jagannath Puri. Abhay stayed in Puri for 3 or 4 days, wandering around the holy places and visiting the famous Puri seaside with its sparkling beach and strongly pounding surf. Several times he recognized some of the priests from the Jagannath temple as they smoked cigarettes. And he heard of other unsavory activities of the sadhus connected with the temple. What kind of sadhus were these who ate fish with their Jagannath prasadam and smoked? In this respect, he found Jagannath Puri disappointing. Wow. Then there's the issue of drinking tea. In Srila Prabhupada's married days, his wife, Radharani Devi, used tea drinking to distance herself from her husband's preaching programs. In Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, it is described that when Prabhupada hosted guests and gave discourses on the Srimad Bhagavatam in the main room of their house, his wife would deliberately go upstairs to drink black tea. This was her excuse to avoid participating in his spiritual discussions. Abhay was a dutiful husband and a loving father. His family life, however, was unhappy because his wife and children were not very enthusiastic about spiritual life. At this time, his business was in difficulty. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati appeared to Abhay in a dream. He was instructed by his divine grace to take sannyas, the renounced order of life. Not long after this revelation, Abhay discovered, much to his dismay, that while he was out, his wife had traded his handwritten Srimad Bhagavatam manuscript to a local shop for tea biscuits. When he returned and asked about the missing manuscript, she admitted what she had done, but showed no remorse. He remonstrated with her, "What do you want? Do you want tea or me?" She frivolously replied, "I'll take tea." This was the last straw, the highlight of their differing values. His complete dedication to spiritual writing and preaching versus her desire for conventional family comfort and the habit of drinking tea. This finalized his decision to leave family life behind and fully embrace a life of renunciation. That night, after having made provisions for his wife and grown-up children, Abhay left home once and for all. From this story, I can understand why Srila Prabhupada has so much against drinking tea. So, here the personality of Kali has asked for a deal from the chief amongst the protectors of religion, Mahārāja Parīkṣit. Thus being petitioned, the king gave him permission to reside in sinful places. One may wonder how the king was being merciful by releasing the personality of sin into the world. But Kali could only live where sinful behavior was already being done. He was not the cause. He was the facilitator and the result. The living beings taking birth in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy are carrying a lot of karmic baggage, the desires and results of their thoughtless actions in past lives. Therefore, the odds of human society taking up the advice of His Divine Grace given in this purport is almost nil. Srila Prabhupada understood that, and in the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 10, he writes this: in this age, it is very difficult to follow thoroughly the regulative principles and studies of the Vedas, which were formerly recommended. However, if one gives oral reception to the sound vibrated by great devotees and acharyas, that alone will give him relief from all material contamination. Therefore, it is the recommendation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that one should simply hear from authorities who are actually devotees of the Lord. Hearing from professional men will not help. Yep. Professional men, those who make a living and earn money by reciting spiritual topics and Shastra. Now, hearing Shravanam is the beginning. If we hear from those who are actually self-realized, then the nectarian rivers will flow into our ears. After hearing comes chanting, Kirtanam. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nastyeva, 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 Gatiranyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. Chanting, dancing, hearing revealed scriptures from the bona fide spiritual master, and then feasting on delicious food offered to Lord Krishna with love. That is Srila Prabhupada's method of reaching everyone and engaging them in awakening their dormant love for Krishna. The Lord never gives up on anyone, and He will always give you another chance. But why wait millions of years until the next human birth? The process has never been easier. So take this opportunity and make your life successful. That's it for today's session. Thank you for listening. For ISKCON Hong Kong, I'm Sravaniya Dasi. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Gaura Nitai ki jai. Hari Hari Bol.